Today on Ready, Set, Scale. Editor-in-Chief Jeanette Mulvey and expert guests dive deep into strategies and insights that can propel your small business forward. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale up, our goal is to equip you with creative and actionable advice to help you bring your company to the next level. On your mark, ready, set, scale.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our Ready, Set, Scale special year-end financial planning workshop. I am Jeanette Mulvey, the editor-in-chief of Co., and thank you so much for being here. So it's the end of the year and it's time already to start thinking about tax season, but more importantly, it's time to make sure you have all of your finances in order so that you're running the right reports and you have the right documents ready for your accountant when the year begins. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about: what reports, how to manage your cash flow, and just generally speaking, how to be on top of your finances so you can enjoy the holidays and not be worried about it when tax season comes. Before we get started talking to our experts, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have T-Mobile for Business, Brevo, Dell, FedEx, Iron Mountain, Oracle NetSuite, Relay Financial, RingCentral, Square, Walmart Business, and Xero. I'd like to welcome my first speaker, David Emmerman, Head of Enterprise at Xero, and Phil Palin, Brand and AI Strategist at Phil Palin Collective, who is a customer of Xero. Welcome to both of you. All right, Dave, welcome. Now, Dave, you were an accountant before you joined Xero, so you know a lot about small businesses and taxes. Tell us a little bit about what small business owners should be doing right this minute to be thinking about tax season.
Yeah. So I think where small business owners have to start thinking about the end of the calendar year is really prepping all their information to get ready for tax season. But that's specifically for tax season. Like in reality, businesses are really operating throughout the course of the year. And so prepping information and getting your data as accurate as you can on a day-to-day basis, or even month to month or week to week, that's what prepares you in the end of the year to be truly ready for tax season.
So a little bit more about that. What does that mean? Does that mean printing reports, running reports? I mean, it's a little early for that. So does that mean just kind of making sure that you are organized and know your situation and where things stand before the end of the year?
Yeah, so I think it's really more about understanding what transactions you're running through your business, right? So small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses have large volumes of transactions that hit their accounts, whether it's a checking account, a credit card, loan accounts, whatever they may be. And really understanding the purpose and the reason why you're having those transactions is setting you up for what tax season impact is what that's gonna look like. So being on top of most, if not all, of your transactions, both from the revenue side and the expense side, is going to help kind of draw the picture for what tax season starts to look like. And the more proactive you are with that information throughout the course of the year, the more proactive you can be in painting that picture as you go throughout the calendar year.
Yeah, I like the word proactive is key. So Phil, thank you for being here. You are a small business owner. You are not a tax or financial expert. So your perspective is appreciated. Tell us just about your first tax season as a small business owner.
Oh gosh, that was a few years ago, but I remember it fondly. Look at these gray hairs. It was a big learning curve. I don't think I fully understood how much preparation was required. You know, in your first year of business that you complete successfully, you're thinking, gosh, I mean, I want to be successful, but I also just want to do everything properly. I don't really want to get in trouble. So I think I learned very quickly how to track expenses, how to stay organized, not just during tax season or leading up to tax season, but actually throughout the whole year. Documenting things early and often, planning ahead to avoid last minute stress. For me, and the nature of my work in my business, I was doing quarterly payments. So that was also new to me. Yeah, those are some of the things that I remember fondly. Good and bad memories from my
Do
first year.
do you remember anything that just was like a last minute surprise that you had no idea you were supposed to be keeping track of?
Yeah, there was a year, it wasn't the first year, but there was a year where I switched accountants, and my second accountant, and it was the last year that I worked with him, told me 2 days before tax season that I owed um, an amount that was equivalent to the price of a new Toyota. And so, yeah, and like that's very memorable to me. No, in the earlier years, it was all paper. So like keeping track of my receipts and keep track of everything in a file. I still do that, although the process is now more digitized, and I use tools like Zero to digitize and automate a lot of this.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that because you took me right into my next question for Dave, which is we're talking about technology and well, we're talking about finances and how you use technology for that. And Dave, my question to you is just because a person owns the technology doesn't necessarily mean they know how to use it or that they're using it to their best advantage. So Dave, can you tell me a little bit about the kinds of features and tools that businesses may not be using as often as they should?
So what we often see is just kind of incompleteness of use of a product, right? So people will buy a product because for various different reasons, and especially accounting or financial products that they use in their day-to-day lives. So they may buy a product to do invoicing, but may not think about what that means for the expenses that they have. And if you don't enter all that information, you get into a scenario where you have an incomplete picture. You have pieces that you can clearly see, like as an example with the invoicing side, but you may not know about lurking expenses that are hidden in the background that you're not expecting. And a little bit of to what Phil was mentioning before, you aren't able to get a full picture. And if you're working with an accountant or tax professional, they may not be able to see that full picture if you're not utilizing all those other areas of your accounting system. I think where we see this most prevalent is in accounts payables or expenses that we have. Especially, and I'm not talking about going to Starbucks and swiping your credit card. I'm talking about the more predictable expenses that come up where you may have a vendor payment that may have some sort of terms, and you can anticipate that you're going to need some money to pay that at some point. That information is critical. And as Phil explained, in before the technology was around to be able to support this in a more digital experience, you'd have to go into the file, and if the receipt wasn't or the invoice from your vendor wasn't in that file, you were searching somewhere, and it was probably not in your email, and it became quite a bit more stressful. From a practitioner's perspective, that also becomes stressful, right? So if Phil was my client and he came to me, and he wasn't, but that's okay. If he had come to me asking about an estimated tax payment, if I didn't have the information, my first question was always, well, how are you doing? Are we on track from last year? Are we expecting more revenue, less revenue? And that's a really hard question to both ask and answer when you don't have a system in place and you're not utilizing all of it.
So I'm going to run back to Phil. So I'll talk to you in a second, Dave. Phil, tell us, based on what Dave said, what are some of the tools and more importantly, kind of like what are some of the reports that you monitor most closely? Because I think when someone has accounting software, it can do a lot of things, but they don't necessarily know the value of those things. So what are some of the reports and the data that you look at regularly?
That's a really good question. And in fact, I'm like yes anding Dave's comment because I have been using, for example, invoicing for clients around the world, invoicing features in Xero for almost a decade. And only more recently am I using and utilizing reports like cash flow reports. Like, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit how new this is for me, given that I've had a successful business for well over 10 years and worked with clients all over the world and made millions of dollars. But this like spreadsheets and finance, like there's a reason I didn't study this in university, and there's a reason I consider my accountant my next most important person in my business besides myself. Cash flow reports, like even looking at this visualized, is relatively new for me. Even getting out of a like manual spreadsheet is relatively new for me and exciting. It's still a little scary, to even be on this panel talking about financial literacy. I'm like, ask me about branding, ask me about AI, ask me about any of these. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know about these things, but I suppose that's what makes it relatable. I think I would just add to what Dave said. It's like, you don't necessarily need to be an expert in this stuff overnight. Like you don't have to go from 0 to 100 when you're using the tool or using a new tool. For me, it's been a gradual process of learning and understanding what's important for me to pay attention to in my business, and then understand how I can get a little bit more independence around that using tools instead of having to go to my accountant every single time I have a question about my business.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, the independence piece. So why, if you've been running this business for so long, what took you so long? Were you just afraid? Did you feel like you didn't need it?
Honey, I'm busy. I'm just go by the fundamental philosophy of more money in than out. I
Yeah.
know that sounds like kind of like silly, but no, it's true. Like I think as a business owner, I've been responsible to make sure that I'm not overspending. I didn't start my business with a loan. I started it with money that I had in my savings account. I hit the ground running and started to get clients that needed help with their websites and their social media strategy. That's all I know. But yeah, no, it's nice. It's refreshing to know that it's not just my brain and intuition that's now guiding my decisions.
Yeah. So you just got to the point where you really needed more information.
Well, yeah, I'm still at the point where I know that I need to make decisions that are based on numbers instead of feelings. That's gotten me so far in my business. But in order for me to get to the next level, they have to be, it has to be quantitative.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So cash flow, we're talking about that a lot today. So cash flow is one thing, more money in than out, makes perfect sense. What are some of the other big financial challenges you face as a small business owner? Is it getting paid? Is it making sure that you're invoicing customers for all of the work that you do? What are some of those other big challenges?
Yeah, the ones that you just listed are probably the ones that are most poignant for my business. I mentioned that I have had clients all over the world, over 34 countries in 13 years. So one that might be unique to my business, although I don't think it's unique to me because now with the ability to work remotely and serve clients around the world, not contingent on geography, I think there's a lot of small businesses out there that are doing business internationally. So even getting paid, navigating different currencies is specifically Zero has helped me navigate that, being able to get paid in British pounds, being able to make it easy for my clients to pay me in their own currency rather than having to convert it, what's today's rate, etc. That's been huge for me. What else? Zero integrating with Stripe. So for me, being able to accept credit card has meant faster payments, like getting paid faster, even though obviously I pay a processing fee on that. In my eyes, that's the cost of doing business nowadays, is being able to make it convenient for my client to pay me quickly. One of my favorite things is when clients enroll in auto pay. Oof, that's so good. I love that when money just appears. And so I encourage clients to do that. And also I've tried all different kind of billing models over the years as a service-based business. You know, I learned early on that you can't just do all the work 100% and then invoice for it. Now, if it's a consultation, I bill 100% up front. If it's a project over, say, 4 months, I'll split it, the entire project cost up over those 4 months. I'll say I've arrived at a point now where I never have clients that go, I would say, longer than a week after a deadline. Zero reminds them. I don't even have to worry about it. Zero reminds them, you're late. And I've got these systems in place that I've learned from over the years.
That's great. Thank you so much. Dave, coming back to you for the last question. I know you guys recently conducted a survey and looked at cash flow, and that 60% of the small businesses you surveyed have cash flow problems. Why do you think it's so challenging for small businesses?
So I think it kind of comes back to what Phil was saying. In as you grow as a business owner, you don't learn these things necessarily out the gate. And even the understanding of cash flow as a concept is almost foreign in many ways, right? Because it's not necessarily just about, you know, money coming in and money going out. It's understanding the health around that. And I think what our study, what you know, what our surveys and studies kind of showed was that there was not as high of a small business financial literacy as we were hoping. And that really comes from the fact that, you know, small business owners come into their businesses because they're really good at what they do and they have passion behind it. This accounting thing, well, that just kind of comes along at the last minute. And, you know, I think when you're thinking about, you know, overall financial literacy and understanding of an important concept as such as cash flow, um, that's where we're not coming out of school ready for that stuff. We're good at what we do, and we're good at building businesses to help support, you know, the economy. But it's really a matter of understanding and having that financial literacy.
Well, that's great. I thank you both for your time. I think we learned a lot today. And I think our audience will be ready for tax season. So thank you so much. All right, that was some great advice, and we really appreciate it. Our next guest works for a different kind of company and is going to also talk to us about financial planning and preparing for tax season and how your business can be totally ready. So from Relay, I'd like to welcome Yusuf West. He is the co-founder and CEO of Relay Financial. Hi, Yusuf, how are you?
I'm good, Jeanette. It's awesome to be here. Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you
having me
so much.
and Relay.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. So first of all, I want you to first explain what Relay is and what your business does, because it's a little bit different than a business model that most people are familiar with.
Of course. Our business is called Relay, and we're a digital bank that delivers like cash flow clarity for heart of America's small businesses, like many of the folks kind of on this call. If you were to kind of boil it down, like what we offer is checking accounts, savings accounts, debit cards, credit cards, payments, all from your phone or your laptop or computer. And effectively what we're building is like an all-in-one, we call it kind of the financial command center for small businesses. Ultimately, what all small business owners kind of want is they just want one place where they can go to understand their cash position, manage their back office processes, and collaborate with team members on key financial workflows. We kind of joke internally that small business owners wake up every morning, they check two things. They check Instagram and they check their bank balance. And so we want to make that check on their bank account as meaningful as possible and really deliver. And the reason we're kind of laser focused on this is delivering kind of that cash flow clarity that they really care about.
Yeah, so that's what we want to talk about today is cash flow. You are a small business expert because you are dealing with small businesses all the time and your business is focused on serving their needs. So can you talk a little bit about cash flow? First of all, what do we even mean by cash flow? And then what are some of the trends you are seeing in terms of how business owners think about and manage their cash flow?
Yeah, so when we're talking about cash flow or like cash flow visibility, we're trying to understand how much money do we have coming in and how much do we have going out? And kind of the difference or delta between those two numbers is our cash flow. Small business owners, I think since the beginning of time have always struggled with this because you're trying to stand up a service, you're trying to help your customers and manage your team. And there's a lot of work that goes into it, candidly. And it's really hard to, in that context, when you don't have perhaps a dedicated finance person to stay on top of your money. And so we actually did a kind of a report. We did a study on this and surveyed 760 small business owners across the US on their cash flow issues. And what that kind of told us was some very kind of stark statistics on small business pain points. So we see that kind of 91% of these small businesses actually faced a serious cash flow challenge. And the more concerning is most never see them coming. So they're kind of spending their money and, money's coming in and they think they have enough. And then, it kind of results in a surprise or a cash flow crunch. And so when we look at this past year, a third of them, 31%, actually missed or had to delay like a big payment. And that's not just a supplier bill or maybe even rent. That includes the owner's salary. And it wasn't like super surprising as a result of like all this data is that 71% say cash flow issues actually take a personal toll, whether it's like persistent stress, burnout, or like lack of sleep. And so that's really kind of what we're here to go and solve. We don't love hearing that, right? Like small business owners are the backbone of our economy. I think it's 44% of new jobs are added by small business owners. And so what we really are here to do is help small business owners kind of walk what we call is like the cash flow tightrope. So they can be prepared for cash flow kind of challenges. And they don't have to kind of forego their salary or cut jobs when faced with this kind of cash flow crunch. Just to share kind of a customer story, this individual named David Caledron, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a co-founder of an animation studio and a Relay customer. He kind of hit a work slowdown, right? Like sometimes you're really busy and you're like, oh God, how can I ever support another client? And sometimes, things slow down. In this case, for David, things slowed down and he wasn't getting as many jobs as usual. And the business had like a very short cash runway, which meant David was kind of weeks away from having to cut jobs and close up shop. And this is a story we hear all the time. And that's why we focus on helping business owners have enough cash and make sure the money's set aside. So when these scenarios do crop up, because they do crop up, they're prepared and kind of have the money set aside for a rainy day.
It sounds like what you're describing is this concept of profit first cash flow management, which I had not really heard of actually. So can you talk about what that really means and why it's important for businesses?
Yeah, so profit first, it was come up with by a guy named Mike Michalowicz. He's written this book called Profit First. We hear from many small business owners that this, in terms of financial management, is a system that just makes sense. It is a cash flow methodology, and what it involves is kind of setting up separate bank accounts to kind of organize your money. So you might have an account for your income, for your operating expenses, for your payroll, for your taxes, for your own salary, right? For your owner's pay. And all of that kind of structure, what we see small business owners doing is they actually are using their banking in that context as a form of accounting. So I know that the money that I need to make payroll is set aside. I'm not going to accidentally spend it. Or the money that I need to be able to pay my taxes, it's set aside. And I know that I'm not going to accidentally spend it. And so, what's really amazing about what Mike has created with the profit first kind of cash flow methodology is that it helps these business owners prioritize profit. And it really helps meet the business owner where they are, right? Like small business owners live and breathe, like their oxygen is their cash and it's the language that they speak. And so, when applying kind of this methodology, Relay really leans in, right? Like we are the official banking partner for Profit First, and we have over 20,000 small business owners across the US practicing Profit First with Relay because they can easily set up multiple accounts. So whether it's a profit account, taxes account, operating expenses, they can split it out automatically. So the idea is the money comes into your income account and you set off, say 20% for taxes or 50% for payroll or whatever it is. And we just make it really easy for you to plan for the long term. And that's how you're able to kind of avoid some of the cash flow crunches that often occur.
So it's
just
a way.
to kind of,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and just to link it back to David that I mentioned earlier, he actually discovered Profit First and then switched to Relay after this cash flow crunch happened. So he actually survived it, and he started working with a financial advisor, and they began setting profit aside. And this allowed him to kind of organize the rest of his income across separate accounts, each focused on like dedicated expenses. And so, now he's kind of built up that cash runway. He's on top of his money, and he's ready for any kind of cash flow curveballs.
So generally speaking, with small businesses that are dealing with a cash flow challenge, what do you find are like the most common mistakes that they're making? Like, how are they ending up in this situation?
Yeah, I think the biggest, I think there are two things. I think there is a limitation of time. Like small business owners are often doing their accounting or banking kind of after hours or late into the evening or night. So I think that's like one challenge. And then oftentimes the reason that people go into business for themselves is because they're great at, maybe it's baking, right? Like we have a number of customers that run amazing bakeries, and that's what they're great at. That's what they're passionate about. And so sometimes keeping track of finance isn't their strongest suit. So they're trying to use spreadsheets to do it or back of the napkin math, and it's really challenging when it probably in their personal life, in their in their day to day, they have access to digital and like mobile payment solutions like PayPal or Venmo. And fundamentally, it's kind of time, right? It's almost 2025. Small business owners should benefit from the same kind of innovation that they've had in their personal banking for their business. And that's kind of what we're building at Relay. And through kind of better tooling, we can hopefully deliver a better view into their cash position. And customers are saving a lot of time with features that kind of get them clarity into team spending with our kind of like receipt management feature, or issuing cards and policies to team members, or getting cash flow control through our 20 free checking accounts and auto transfer rules, and our spend management functionality that kind of can set up kind of blocks or allowances around a card to only spend in certain categories or at certain vendors as well.
That's great. My last question before we go is to ask you about the importance of integrating systems together. What systems do you recommend that small businesses, the technologies that they integrate together with their financial reporting?
Yeah, I think the foundations that we see is, number one, you obviously want a really strong banking solution. I think in our modern world, I think small business owners can expect more. I'm not just saying that because of Relay. I think whether it's Relay or somewhere else, there are great solutions out there from a banking perspective. And what you want to pair that with is a really strong accounting software solution. Say like Xero is a great solution, or QuickBooks Online. Because if you're pairing a great banking solution with great accounting software, data can just sync really seamlessly. And you can actually collaborate better with your accountant or bookkeeper, and feel confident that like kind of the rich data Relay sends across into your accounting software is categorized correctly and gets you kind of even further ahead in terms of how you plan financially. That would be one. The second would be your payroll integrations. Payroll is such a large expense for small business owners. That's actually why we partner with Gusto to connect kind of your banking and HR platforms together. And through this integration, we'll actually like ping you ahead of time to say, hey, you've got a pay run coming up. And it looks like based on your historical transactions, you might not have enough funds in this account to make payroll. And that's really helpful for small business owners because then they can kind of move funds across into that account and make sure that the pay run doesn't go awry. Yeah, and those would be the things that I would say are my two core recommendations.
That's great. Any last bit of year-end financial planning advice for our audience before we go?
We're coming to the end of 2024. 2025 is a new year. It's a great opportunity to kind of clean up back of house or your back office and start the new year afresh. So whether that's with Relay, better accounting software, better payroll solution, highly recommend taking advantage of this time to get ready for 2025.
That's great. Thank you so much, Yusuf West. It was great to have you, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeanette. Awesome to be here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Yusuf. It was great to have you. And thank you also to Dave and Phil. It was a great conversation today. Thanks to the audience for joining me, and thank you to all of our sponsors. We will see you all next month for our next event. Until then, start working on your finances and getting your books ready for tax season. Take care.